program.
What you talking about?
The program. The program. Get with the program.
Everybody clap to this. Say what?
Get with the program.
It starts now.
Hello and welcome to Get With The Program Radio Show. I'm your host, Gary Jones. Get With The Program Radio Show is a multicultural, informative, relevant, and entertaining one-hour weekly show offering you a combination of diverse interviews with questions and comments. And as always, we will act as a positive source of information. Now listen, if you want to be a guest on the show, log into www.getwiththeprogram.biz. Shoot me an email, leave me a message. You never know. You may have a conversation that we would love to talk about. Or give me a call at 919-255-2757. Now, today we're going to be joined with Mr. Carlos Parks. Mr. Carlos Parks was incarcerated for several years, and now he is the founder of Versatile Development Group and a board member of Fathers United with focus on the development of our youth. He's also a former member of Fresh Start Toastmasters Group of Louisiana. And also we're going to be joined with Cory Booker. Cory Booker is United States Senator right now currently, and he's also running for, he's a 2020 candidate for U.S. Senator of New Jersey. So he's going to give us a call in, and we're going to be looking forward to hearing some conversation from Cory Booker. Looking forward to that. All right. And now let's get back to the show here. Hello, Mr. Carlos Parks. Welcome to Get With The Program Radio Show.
Hey, how you doing?
All right. Welcome, my brother. So, Mr. Parks, tell me about yourself. How's it going, man? You've done a lot of things. Actually, the way you and I met up was very interesting. We met up on a call the other night, and I heard your story. So I decided I wanted to bring you on the show and have this conversation with you. How about that?
I'm definitely ready for a radio conversation. My first one.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we just gonna flow with it, man. Listen, Mr. Parks, so tell me something, man. Where you from? Tell me about yourself. Where you from?
Originally, I was born in Goldsboro, North Carolina. I was raised in Lynchburg, Virginia, and lastly, I was in Durham, North Carolina before moving to Greensboro, North Carolina. So I'm in Greensboro right now. But outside of Greensboro, I'm in a town called Jamestown.
Okay, Jamestown. So you're a North Carolina guy. Wonderful. Right here in the state, man. So I understand that, based on the conversation that you and I talked about, you were incarcerated. You definitely was in the criminal justice system, and you were incarcerated. So we did talk about that in your introduction. So tell me, what was the crime that you were incarcerated for?
Well, I was incarcerated for conspiracy. I was conspiracy to distribute cocaine based in marijuana in the Western District of North Carolina. I was indicted in an area called Lenore, Hickory, Morganton, out that way in the West. And I was housed in Charlotte, Mecklenburg County Jail for about 19 months before starting my 30-year sentence in the federal system.
Mm-hmm. So how much time did you? How many years were you charged with?
Incarcerated.
Mm-hmm.
I received a 30-year sentence, but I was incarcerated for 17 years because I gave back 10 years on appeal. I won a 2255 ineffective assistance of counsel, and they reduced my sentence by 10 years, and that put me out a little early. So I would have been in until 2026 had I not won my appeal.
Okay, so how old were you when you did that sentence? How old were you when you went in?
Well, when I went in, I was 24 years old. I initially went in for a state charge.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing a 15-month sentence when the feds indicted me for some activity that I was involved in probably 3-4 years prior. I was indicted in 99 for what I did in 95. So it was it kind of sat on the shelf for a while, and they came and got me, which is what they do.
Mm-hmm. So basically, for my listeners, we're joined today with Mr. Carlos Parks, who was incarcerated for several years, and this man has gotten out and made big things happen for him. So, we're having a wonderful conversation today, pretty much, and I'm looking forward to finishing this conversation. Basically, what we're talking about is being accepted after incarceration, because there's a lot of things that happen to people when they come out of prison, and it's hard being accepted back into society. Now, Mr. Parks, you have a family. I'm sure you have a family that was supporting you when you went in, right?
Oh, yeah. My family was very supportive. My family was in, my mother was in Durham. My sister was in Richmond, Virginia, I think, or D.C. She was in D.C. Around that time. So they kind of like held me down. My father was in Goldsboro, my other two sisters. So yeah, I had a very, very supportive family, and that's it helps when you support your loved ones when they're gone, when they're away. It can make the difference between a successful transition, like I had, or becoming a part of the revolving doors in recidivism.
Now, I asked you this question the other night, and I want to ask it here on the show as well. Being incarcerated, because a lot of people, they don't know these type of things. Nobody can speak about something that they've never experienced. So being incarcerated, Mr. Parks, how important is time? Because we know time, I mean, by you being there that long, you really understand now every day that go by, you try to make the best of it. So how important is time?
Man, it's well, so someone who's been incarcerated, what they take from you is time. That's something you can't get back. Regardless of how hard I run, I can't get back the 17 years I lost of my son's life. My son was 3 years old when I went in, and he was 20 when I came out. And we haven't been able to get back the relationship that we should have because my son can't get over the fact that I missed so much of his life. Now, we're building a relationship as adults, but that he missed that relationship as a child. And, time is something you can't get back regardless of how. I work hard to try to catch up and try to make up for the 17 years I lost in prison. I like you say, I've achieved a lot. I haven't finished. I'm not done. I'm still running. But I think that individuals who have been incarcerated for a period, not all, but some, will come out with their head on their shoulders, and they understand that we have to try a lot harder to get back the time that we lost. We have to try. I mean, I'm 40-something years old with babies. I got a 3-month-old son because I'm trying to get back what I lost with my son. So I have another son and I have a daughter. But you can't get it back, but you can try your best to make up for it.
Now, do you think people that are out here in society who's never been incarcerated or never been behind bars, do you think people take time for granted?
Oh man, I think they take everything for granted, especially time. I look at people who waste time, and because they don't realize how valuable it is. You don't realize how valuable something is until you've lost it. Once you lose something, then you realize, how valuable it is. So for individuals who have been incarcerated, what are we losing? We're losing time. So we understand the value of it. And I look at people, and how they waste their time. When I first came home, I was in Durham. I rode the bus for 5 months, and I would just sit at the back of the bus and just watch people. And coming home, I left in the 90s. I came home in 2015. So when I came home, everybody on the bus was face down in their phone. There was no conversation. It's just. And I look at most of that as wasting time. How much time do we waste on Facebook? How much time do we waste on other social media? How much time do we waste TikToking? So I don't waste time. I'm a very serious person, but it's because I have to be. I don't have time to play. So that's how I view every second of my day.
Now, can being incarcerated, because I know some people that I've actually had on my show, when they go in prison like that for a certain amount of time, it affects some inmates mentally. Did you suffer from any mental effects? Because I know some of the gentlemen, they went in, some of them come out with different PTSD, different emotional stress with things such as that. Did you suffer any kind of mental stress or any kind of mental states while you were in there upon getting out?
That's a good question, man. Ironically, I went into the field of mental health upon my release, not my first job, but I eventually ventured into becoming a peer support specialist. And I learned about mental health, and I realized that myself and a lot of guys who were in my situation are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. It's almost impossible to go into prison without suffering from some type of PTSD. The difference is we aren't diagnosed. We don't see a specialist. I never saw a therapist while I was incarcerated. I never saw a therapist when I came home. So, we come home and the environment we left was very serious, especially if you were in the penitentiary. So in the federal system, they had different levels. Let me give you a quick example. When I was in the mediums, they have what they call mediums, highs, lows, and camps. Those are the levels. When I was in the medium, when guys would come down, when points come down, they'll put you in the medium. If they come down from the pen and come to the medium, they are what we call burnt out. They go to the shower with their boots on. They sit with their back to the wall. Like, we call them burnt out, but it's because they had to be like that to survive in that environment. So when we come home, you still see a little bit of that. And people in society see it like, what's wrong with them? We're burnt out. And that's post-traumatic stress disorder, and we bring that seriousness to society that's not as serious. So we think, guys who have been in prison for a while seem like they're a bit uptight, but there's a reason for it. And I tried to get programs implemented. I tried to get peer support specialists for everybody coming home from long periods of incarceration, but we couldn't get it passed through the probation and parole. But I haven't stopped. I'm still trying to get it pushed.
Mm-hmm. Wow, interesting conversation. What we're going to do here, Mr. Parks, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to touch more on this conversation. I particularly want to kind of know what happened pretty much after you got out. But listen, don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back with more with Mr. Carlos Parks. And today our conversation is being accepted after incarceration. Listen, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back after this. Steve Rouse, my commentary guest, always keeping me in the loop. What's going on in the world? Steve, what's going on right now with you?
Well, Garrett, early voting is going on, absentee ballots, millions being cast, and the American people will decide who the 45th president of the United States will be. At the end of the day, I think there's basically three questions the American people will be asking before they elect their commander-in-chief. One is, are we economically more secure and better off than we were 4 years ago? Two, do we feel safer in the world? And three, are we healthier than we were 4 years ago? And in my opinion, as a political commentator, on all three of those fronts, I truly believe that the President of the United States has not lived up to the promises that he made 4 years ago. There's 210,000 dead from the coronavirus, more than died in World War II, Korean War, the Vietnam War. The virus is spiking all over the country. He is questioning science and data. And he himself got COVID-19 and hasn't been wearing the masks and telling his supporters not to do the same. So I think that people are just really uneasy of whether the pandemic is being handled well. And America now is even worse off economically than it was. It's going to take a Hail Mary for him to win this thing. He's a fighter, though. He's not going to give up. And it ain't over till the fat lady sings. But only time will tell. COVID-19 has been the game changer in this election. And we just hope and pray the American people stay safe.
All right, Steve Rouse, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that information, man. And, keep us in the loop, Steve. We'll be looking back forward, hearing from you next week, and keep us going on. Keep us in the loop. What's going on, man? Thank you so much, Steve Rouse.
Gary, you got to know your stupid friend's friend. I'm going to tell you, tonight, I couldn't believe what happened. Now, I got a stupid friend, but he took me over his stupid friend's house. So we sitting around, and my man's like, what you drink? I said, I drank Crown Royal. So homeboy said, I got some Crown. Let me fix you a drink. So we go in there and he put ice in my glass. He come back, set the drink down in front of me. I noticed that there was a film on top of my drink. You know what I'm saying? Like grease. I'm like, yo, dude. I'm like, what is this in the water? He's, oh, man. He said, I do this so my ice cubes won't stick and they slide out easy. I said, what you do? He said, I spray Pam in my ice tray and then put the water in there and let the ice freeze. Gary, if you got stupid friends, look, don't drink with them. Bring your own drink. But I got to get out of here, Gary. But I'm just letting you know what happened. It's grave digging. I'm out of here. Talk to y'all later.
Hello once again. Welcome back to Get With The Program Radio Show. I'm your host, Gary Jones. And now we're going to be joined with Cory Booker. Cory Booker is a 2020 candidate for U.S. Senator. We got a tough connection here, but we're going to see can we get Cory, pull him away for just a second. Cory Booker, are you there with us?
Hey, it's Cory Booker.
Hello, Cory Booker. This is Gary Jones. Get With The Program Radio Talk Show here in North Carolina. Welcome you to the show. Glad to have you.
It's so good to be on with you.
Yes, sir. Once again, to my listeners, we have Cory Booker, who is a U.S. Senator now. He's also a candidate for U.S. Senator of New Jersey 2020. And it's a pleasure to have him here on the phone today. Cory, let's get right into it, man. How's the campaign trail?
Listen, I've been out here in North Carolina for Joe Biden, traveling around. I was in Pennsylvania last week for Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and I'm encouraged. There's a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of energy, and I'm excited, especially as a black guy from Jersey, to see the African-American turnout looking so strong. But we still haven't got there yet. There's still a lot of people who haven't voted, haven't participated. They've got to get out. Stand on the sidelines and do nothing is to be complicit in the crisis that we're in this country.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not about it, you're not being about it, then you're a part of it. So we got to make sure people get out to vote, and that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm traveling so much.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let me ask you, how would the Biden-Harris agenda help Black Americans, and how is it different than the Trump agenda?
Well, look, I want everybody to know I've served side by side with Kamala in the Senate for years now, and Joe Biden I've gotten to know pretty well when I ran for president of the United States. And so I know what I had at Donald Trump, someone who ordered his U.S. attorneys and his Justice Department to reignite the drug war by charging the highest possible sentences for crimes, for nonviolent drug crimes, which has led to hundreds and hundreds of years more sentences being piled on disproportionately to African Americans. He's a guy that stopped the Department of Education from doing the kind of things to protect our children, like dealing with the disproportionate discipline practices that often have black children getting higher disciplinary measures than white children. He stopped the kind of programs that were going on to end the school prison pipeline. When it comes to environmental justice, African Americans are disproportionately impacted by pollution, Superfund sites, and other toxins in communities. And he has one of the worst records for going after these corporate polluters that are giving black communities significantly higher rates of asthma and other respiratory problems.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump has done nothing, unlike Joe Biden's going to do, to lowering prescription drug prices. And with so many people having challenges like diabetes and the cost of insulin, I know that we have in Joe Biden, somebody's going to drive down those costs that, again, are going to help our community.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a big thing, which is just access to capital and entrepreneurialism. We know in the black community there's a long history of entrepreneurialism, but not getting equal access to capital. Well, I know that Joe Biden understands and has a plan for getting more funds set up for more black businesses to capital, because as the McKinsey, the consulting company, shows, if blacks were getting equal access to capital as whites get, then we would see our economy grow about over $1 trillion more towards our economy. So from criminal justice to environmental justice to economic equality, the Biden-Harris team have a better vision and a better plan.
Okay. What can the Democrats do to earn the black vote, and particularly black men? What can the Democrats do to earn the vote of black men?
Well, I think, we've got to continue to speak to the issues in our community. Look, as the only senator in America that lives in a majority black city and a majority black community, that fights every single day to help black folks get equal access to opportunity, equal treatment by the police, and free from a lot of the things that inhibit African American success. I think that we've got to continue to let folks know that the Democratic Party, with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, is going to have an agenda that speaks directly to our issues. Everything from raising the minimum wage all the way to better and more resources for public education for kids get the kind of educational resources they deserve. If you are in this America right now somebody that just believes that everyone should have full opportunity, good schools, good access to health care, kind of things that give people a fair playing field, like paid family leave and affordable child care, the thing that helps everyone have a right to start, then you've got to be with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Mm-hmm. And then the outrageous stuff. Well, Kamala and I wrote in the Senate the bill that would create more accountability in policing and end practices that has led to too many of the people, too many black people, black men in particular, unarmed black men being killed by the police. I'm confident that there are things like that that we're going to get done under a Biden administration with Kamala and Joe in the White House.
Now, Cory, in reference to the Electoral College, because I have this question, I get this all the time. In reference to the Electoral College, should we at some point get rid of the Electoral College and depend on the people's vote? Because we noticed when we had Hillary and when Hillary ran, she had the votes, but the Electoral College took it over. So should we consider getting rid of that? What is your thought on that?
Well, my thought on that is very simple. If the person with the most votes should win, period. Electoral College is a legacy from around the time of our founding, where they were making compromises to accommodate slavers and the slave state. We need to make sure, in my opinion, that we are a democracy where the person with the most votes wins. And so I do think we should be re-examining the Electoral College to make a decision as a nation to get rid of it and have the popular will be the one that prevails.
Now, as my last question here, as a U.S. Senator candidate, what are your plans? What are your views on recidivism?
On recidivism? Sir, as you may already know, I'm one of the leading senators in the Senate for criminal justice reform. And one of those things is doing what's necessary to empower people when they come out of prison so that they land on their feet and don't end up back into the system. And one of the best ways you can do that, number one, is allowing people that have been locked up to have access to things like programs so they can get a college education. Every dollar we spend on education in prison lowers the taxpayer costs on recidivism by 4 and 5%. And go, I think it's 4 and 5 times if you get that kind of return on your dollar. Number two is when people come out of prison, we need to start expunging records and giving people better access to jobs and housing so that they can provide for themselves. And so when I was mayor of the city of Newark, I created the first in my state, an Office of Reentry in City Hall, and started creating job programs and housing programs for men and women coming home from prison. Because I knew not only would it save taxpayer dollars in the long run, but it would elevate the well-being and the success of men and women who've already paid their debt to society.
Wonderful answers. Now, my last question here. When it comes to politicians, I get this question a lot, Cory. When it comes to politicians have a tendency of promising and saying a lot of different things to get into office. What can you say to that we can actually guarantee, perhaps from an executive decision, that the Democratic Party can say for us, for the people who vote for them? Because there's a lot said to get into the seat, but what can we hold them accountable for?
Well, I understand your question right, and I'm just going to say, number one, go vote. If you don't vote, you can't complain. If you don't vote, you're not going to control the outcome of the system. And we're going to make sure the polls are safe. People to understand that the proxies, there are people looking over it, people making sure you're going to be able to vote. And after you vote, don't stop. Make sure the people we elect, we hold them accountable. And that's why I'm happy that the Biden-Harris team want to have more transparency in government, more accountability in government, but they have more ethics laws that are going to make sure that the will of the people is going to be done. I'm so proud that they support campaign finance rules that are going to start to decrease the power of corporations and elevate the power of the people. We have got to vote. If you don't vote in this election, you're going to allow the continued corruption of the Trump administration that we've seen quite clearly. I've never seen a president in my lifetime have different people around them be indicted or convicted of corruption charges. It's time that we bring back more accountability and transparency, and Biden and Harris stand for that. And I just want to thank you, man, for giving me an opportunity today. We know that Black radio has a long tradition in our history, not just for entertaining, but for informing, for engaging, for being a part of a larger movement for social justice. So thank you for being one of the voices that's keeping that tradition alive. And I'm grateful for you having me on.
Oh, wonderful, Cory. Thank you so much, Cory. I really appreciate you being here. Cory Booker is 2020 candidate for U.S. Senator, New Jersey. Cory, thank you for calling in. And anything you'd like to say to my listeners?
Vote like you like, depends on it, because it does.
All right. Thank you so much, Cory. Vote, and look forward to hearing back from you again. I want to hear back from you after the election, okay?
Brother, please, I'd love to make that connection again. So let's try to do let's both make our best effort to make that work.
Once again, thanking Cory Booker for joining us today. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back after this. Hello and welcome back to Get With The Program radio show. Again, I'm your host, Gary Jones. Now, we're joined today with Carlos Parks. Mr. Parks was incarcerated for several years, and now he is the founder of Versatile Development Group and board member of Fathers United with focus on the development of our youth. He's also a former member of Fresh Start Toastmasters Group of Louisiana and a current member of the Daily Eagle Speaker Bureau. And he's also a motivational speaker. Now, we're having a conversation today about being accepted after incarceration. And welcome back to the show, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right. Now, we talked about a lot of things. Of course, we talked about adjusting after incarceration, which is a big thing. Now, do you think people, when they come out back into society, do you think that they need some kind of rehabilitation, or can they just come right out of prison after doing maybe 15 years and just jump back into the world?
No, that's not a good idea. The system is set up where it's a step down. When you come out of prison, you're supposed to go to a halfway house. In federal system, in the state system, they don't have that. So that's a part of the reason why the recidivism rate for the state is higher than the federal system. I said in my TED talk that the federal, the state recidivism rate is 76%. Federal recidivism rate is 44%. You know, and it has a lot to do with the step down that they use in the federal system. So when I came home, I went to a halfway house in Durham. I went to Troy House. And from there, I went to my mother's house. So if a person comes home from the system and goes straight into a home environment and they immediately have bills to pay, they're immediately eating their family's food. So I didn't have that weight on me. I was in a halfway house. So that definitely helps. I know some guys wish they could come home and go straight into their house and into their own bed. But if you've been going for a long time, it might not be in your best interest to go straight home. So I agree with the step down system they use.
Now, what about when you came out of prison? What about dating after incarceration? Because now, when you're in prison for so long, there's not a lot of connection, sexually connections with females per se. But how has dating, when you first came out, how was that adjusting to society and getting back into that field?
Well, now, like I say, I'm an exception. I came home and I put myself on a 30-day hiatus from sexual contact with a woman. So that's after doing 17 years. I said, I'm not going to go home like most guys. The first thing they want to do is go see a girl. Some of them take, unnecessary risks. They leave the halfway house early or whatever. They take unnecessary risks just for that, moment of pleasure. So me, I felt like I was strong enough to withstand that type of temptation, and I wanted to focus. So I set a goal that I wasn't going to have sex with a woman for 30 days. I wasn't going to mess with a woman for 30 days while I made sure I got my driver's license, my bank account. I had different things that I want, my short-term goals. I wanted to get those out of the way first. So they were paramount. A woman was later. That can wait. I wanted to take care of what was important to my successful transition, and sex wasn't one of those things. So, but like I say, that's an exception. Most guys don't do that. They're in a hurry to take care of that. I wasn't.
Mm-hmm. In relation to, I heard you say recidivism, which is a big topic about, of course, when inmates get out, some say that the system is set up for them to go right back in. So what I'm hearing is halfway houses are really a very instrumental part. What are some of the challenges that you see in the halfway houses today?
Well, it depends on where you go. When I came to the halfway house, we couldn't use our cell phones in the halfway house. So a lot of guys were sneaking their cell phone in the halfway house, and that just caused a lot of guys to get caught and get violated and get sent back to prison. But they eventually gave them permission to use a cell phone, because a cell phone is like a computer. Everybody has a cell phone, so why can't we have? But anyway, it just depends on where you go. Rules. If the more rules you have, the more chance you have of breaking them. And in a halfway house environment, it's full of rules. It's rule after rule after rule. And if you break one of those rules, it could have you sent back to prison. because you're still an extension of the prison. You're still an extension of the prison. So it's like you're kind of free, but you're not free. You know, that's the downside of a halfway house. And then there's an abuse of power.
Wow.
So yeah.
Good information. Now, police accountability. We know, you've been in the criminal justice system. You've seen law enforcement, and while you were in there, I'm sure you had plenty of time to read and study law, and you had a chance to really recognize a lot of things when you have a lot of time on your hand. But police accountability, you see what's going on in reference to the George Floyd situation and police accountability. What is your take? Do you think, I know we're shifting gears here, do you think a lot of that is going on and still going on right even inside of the jail system? Because you were there. Do you see that happening with the guards in prison as well?
Oh yeah, it's terrible. And so like you said, accountability. It's corruption on all levels, not just in the streets and police system, but officers, especially in certain places. You go to in Texas, in Atlanta. Believe it or not, Atlanta is overwhelmingly black COs, correctional officers. But that's the place where it's notorious that you will get whooped. They will punish you down there if you get out of line. And I've actually seen these COs. We call it lay hands on somebody. A little small guy, small frame guy from India, and they beat the brakes off of him. And they will put you in the hole until you heal up. So yeah, it goes down in the prison. There's a lot of things that happen in there with COs that you would not believe. COs have been caught, having sex with, males. A male CO got caught with a male. So it happens. There's a lot of stuff going down in there that they don't report. And one of the things is they have power, and they abuse that power quite often. And they treat our families like trash when they come to visit us. So that's one of the things that definitely needs to be addressed.
Wow. So what I'm hearing, basically, what we're seeing, some of the law enforcement and things that are going on outside is actually happening in prison as well, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's an abuse of power. It's some people can deal with power, and then some people it goes to their head. And what's happening is they're giving power to individuals who formerly had none. These people were probably ridiculed in school, probably looked down upon. So when they got the upper hand, they abuse it. They use it for retribution, get back time.
Wow. Interesting conversation. Listen, what we're going to do, we're going to take another break. When we come back, we want to talk about what you're doing now and how has prison time prepared you to be the person that you are today, because you're doing big things now. So change can happen, people. Trust me, just because you're incarcerated don't mean that things can't change. But listen, what we're going to do, we're going to take a break again. And I want to reach out to my other good friend here, Ursula Camille, who's going to give us a good message today. Ursula, what you got on your mind? Tell me what's going on.
Today, we're going to talk about creating your new norm. The dictionary says that norm is something that is usual, typical, or standard. Sometimes our norm gets interrupted with unwanted or uninvited change. Examples are the pandemic, divorce, change or loss of employment, loss of a loved one, or having to move due to circumstances beyond your control. When this happens, it is how we deal with it that reveals if we have a mindset that is fixed or a growth mindset. Tectello shares that a fixed mindset is one that is limited, avoids challenges, and gives up easy. A growth mindset is one of freedom. It perseveres and embraces challenges. In the book of Ruth, we find Naomi having to create her new norm more than once. Creating a new norm began with Naomi, her husband, and 2 sons leaving Bethlehem, Judah, due to a famine to go to Moab. After being in Moab, Naomi's husband died, leaving it to be she and her 2 sons. Her 2 sons then took on wives, Ruth and Orpah, giving Naomi 2 daughter-in-laws. Naomi then lost her 2 sons. Within a 10-year span, Naomi was a widow and had lost her 2 children. Naomi returned back to her people, and Ruth, her daughter-in-law, went with her. Naomi advised Ruth on how to get her kinsman redemption, and Ruth obeyed. This led Ruth to marrying Boaz and then giving birth to a son, making Naomi now a grandmother. Ruth 1:1 says, "Now it came to pass in the days." Dake's Reference Bible says that this expression denotes impending trouble, followed by deliverance and a happy ending. When life comes to visit with challenges, let us look within the challenge and see change by having a growth mindset to create our new norm so we too can say, now it came to pass. I encourage you to embrace the change and begin to create your new norm.
Hello and welcome back to Get With The Program radio show. Again, I'm your host, Gary Jones. As I said before, today we're joined with Mr. Carlos Parks. Now, again, Mr. Parks was incarcerated for several years, and now he is the founder of Versatile Development Group and a board member of Fathers United with focus on the development of our youth. He's also a former member of Fresh Start Toastmasters Group in Louisiana and current member of the Daily Eagle Speaker Bureau, and he's a motivational speaker. Now, today we've talked about being accepted after incarceration. Now, speaking on that topic, Carlos, being accepted, how has society accepted you? Because we know when people get out of prison, sometimes it's very hard for you to get a job. How was the struggle of you being accepted back into society, and what kind of jobs were you able to get?
Okay, that's a good question. I was accepted because I was a good communicator, and Toastmasters International helped to make me more, a better communicator, a more positive communicator, a more confident communicator. And I took that into my job interviews. So I knew it's like when we used to call it joning when I was young, we used to crack on each other. So if you know you're dark skin like me, you know what the person that you're cracking against is going to use. And that's going to be your complexion. And you automatically take that phone and say, yeah, I know I'm black, but da-da-da-da-da. So that's what you do with your job interview. That's what I did. So I knew what my strikes were. I didn't have experience, and I was a convicted felon. But I will work harder than anybody else that's applying for this position. You know what your strikes are. So let's get that out the way first. Then they don't have anything to dwell on in the interview. So yeah, I've done well with occupations since I came home. I never applied for a job and got an interview that I did get the job. So I've been fortunate because if I can get my mouth open, if I can talk to you, I can get the job.
Wow, that's good confidence, because a lot of inmates are not that fortunate. I know people that have gotten out and were very unlucky with getting a job. And again, we go back to the recidivism, they wind up back in. I do want to ask you this question. I want to rewind just a little bit. Since you've been out, have you at any moment thought about doing some of the things that you did before?
Not 1 second. Not 1 second. It's never even in my. So I was a kingpin. I was very well connected, and I have friends who are still in the game, as we call it. And one of my friends even tried to tempt me with $100,000 for my connect. I told him no. There's no way. No, I was very well connected, like I say. And he offered me $100,000 cash, showed it to me, and kind of kept on harassing me about it. But I told him no. It wasn't even an option. So opportunities have presented themselves, and I turned my back on, because I'm not going back. It's not going to happen. Yeah.
Sound like you got your mind made up. So now let's talk a little bit about your organization. You're the founder of Versatile Development Group. Tell me about that.
All right. When I came home, I wanted to start a nonprofit. So I came home at 15. By the end of 15, beginning of 2016, I founded Versatile Development Group, and it works with young children or youth, tweens, what they like to say, to help them become better communicators, because I understand the importance of communication for not only adults, but for our youth. They have a lot to say. They have a lot on their mind. So if we, instill confidence in them in communicating, you'll have less suicide. You'll have less incarceration. So that's my way of working, starting at the beginning to curb them from going into prison. And I also work with individuals. It's also a transition. I'm a re-entry advocate, so I also work in transition, helping individuals transition from prison back into society. So it's twofold in Versatile Development Group. And I also have Versatile Logistics Group, which is my trucking company, that I eventually want to get contracts for individuals coming home from prison to drive my box trucks.
What I'm hearing, my friend, is that you're doing wonderful things. You taking your experience. So I guess my question would be, how has prison time prepared you for what you're doing now? Because you were locked up, and I think we touched on this a little earlier, but with the organization that you are presenting now, giving back to the youth, sharing your testimony, because you've been through that, and so you want to make sure that other people don't follow that same path that you did. So how has prison time prepared you for the person that you are today?
Ironically, I'm a leader. I've always been a leader. But prison, how did it prepare me? It put me in a leadership position, believe it or not. I was the leader of my race, what we call a shot caller, when I was in Louisiana, in Pollard, Louisiana. So, it's kind of a big responsibility when you're the shot caller, because everybody looks at you for answers. So it helped me to learn to deal with, responsibility, making calls, like very important calls. Like if my word could be the difference between a riot and a peaceful resolution. So I'm used to handling pressure thanks to my time in prison. It helped me a lot. It helped me with, because I'm a real estate agent now, it helped me with recognizing different trends and recognizing different things about a person. It helped me to start conversations. It goes a long way with the occupation I'm in now, being able to just talk to a person.
And I hear sometimes that when I hear people mention of drug dealers, kingpins, hustlers, things of that nature, you guys actually controlling a group of people even then and counting money. Your accountants, numbers, you understand the dollar sign, you understand, the whole mechanism of how to make money, and you're very serious about it. So with that being said, I can just imagine when somebody wanted to offer you $100,000. I mean, it took you had to have been through something in prison that has prepared you for saying, no, I don't want to go back to that. So you truly understand. Now, I hear you say you're in the real estate. Wow. So you've come out of prison. You say you did how many years? You did how many years again?
I've been home 5 years. I came home in 2015.
And what was the time that you did how many years you do in prison?
I was in prison for 17 years.
17 years.
98 to 2015.
Wow. So 17 years in prison. Now you've gotten out. You have several companies. You have a box truck business, right? And you're in the real estate. Wow. I mean, you made a drastic change, and you also helping the youth. Now, this is the deal. Now, you're a motivational speaker as well. So how can people get in contact with you if they want you to come and speak to their events?
Okay, well, I just recently did a TED Talk. You can find me on TEDx Greensboro. Matter of fact, you just put my name in, Carlos Parks, in YouTube. It'll come up. My TED Talk will come up. I'm also an artist. And
I will definitely vouch for that to my listeners. I had a chance to see some of his paintings. I went and looked at them myself on the internet, and this guy, I'm really, really proud of you, Mr. Parks, how your story, how many years you did in prison, and the fact that you were, because during the time when you went in, back then, the crack cocaine epidemic was very, very big then. I mean, that was one of the biggest hustling games that were out at that time. So you did your time, you got out, you're a motivational speaker, you're in the real estate, you got several businesses, you have been a prime example. So now I want to ask you before we go, what would be your comment to young men today who are in that same path that you were in? What would be your words of wisdom to encourage them?
One, get a mentor. I recommend you get a mentor. I always wanted a big brother. I never had one. A friend of mine grew up in the same apartment complex. All of the young guys that grew up in my apartment complex ended up selling drugs except him. And the reason why, because his mother got him a big brother. He was a part of that Big Brother program. And this was in the 80s, and I always envied him because I wanted a big brother. So I'm big on mentorship. Mentors can help you. And another thing, get my manual. I published a manual, how to stay out of prison. My manual it helps you. It helps you to learn the difference. Go left and not go right. So, it's made for individuals in prison, but it will definitely help individuals from going to prison.
Good conversation. Mr. Carlos Parks, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate that. You gave some good information. We got to bring you back, man, for part 2, because I know you have some more information to tell us. I know you have some more, man.
I got plenty.
I really appreciate that. Man, good show today. Once again, we was joined today with Carlos Parks. He was incarcerated for several years, and now he is the founder of Versatile Development Group and a board member of Fathers United, which focuses on development of our youth. And he's also a former member of Fresh Start Toastmasters Group of Louisiana and a current member of the Daily Eagle Speaker Bureau. And he's also a motivational speaker. So now if you want this guy to come out to speak, I definitely encourage you to bring him out. He's been down there. He's been down that road before. He knows what it's about, and he can share some good information. Carlos, once again, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, man.
All right, once again, you've been listening to Get With The Program radio show. I'm your host, Gary Jones. As I always say, stay positive, keep your head up, and remember to
Get with the program.
What you talking about?
The program. The program. Get with the program.
Everybody clap to this. Say what?
Get with the program.
It starts now.